Welcome to Demystify Magic with Molly and Madison.
I'm Molly, a former skeptic turned full-time energy healer and teacher.
And I'm Madison, a born and raised witch running my family's crystal shop.
And we're here to explore all things woo through the lens of both science and spirituality so that you can find the moments of magic in your everyday life and create an intentional spiritual practice.
So if that's what you're into, find a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's demystify some magic.
Howdy doody, friends.
Howdy doody.
We have a very special episode for you. I just told Madison I'm so deep in this hyperfixation. I have to record today because I've spent like 5 hours outlining this episode.
Yeah, I realized sometimes there are things like in this podcast, first and foremost, it's for you guys. But then there's also some things that are for us. And this is for Molly. So if we could just all...
Just gather around.
Yeah, gather around and accept that this is an ADHD hyperfocus live and in action. And just let her ride. I was trying to look through her notes to get on the same page. And after like 5 minutes of me being like, I'm overstimulated, I'm overwhelmed, she just goes, you know what? Just follow my lead. So we're all in this together.
We are talking about the book, The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control. A Path to Peace and Power by Katherine Morgan Schafler. I've mentioned this a couple of times. I'm obsessed with this book. A bunch of you have read it and have mentioned in the Patreon that you feel so called out and so seen reading it that I was like, we have to do an episode. Because as I was listening to this audiobook, I literally could not stop thinking about all of the things that we hear from listeners all the time about why they struggle to start or stick with their spiritual practice. And as I kind of read it with this lens and reread it with this lens and took notes from this lens, I started to see how we can apply the resources and tools in this book to actually creating a sustainable magical practice. And so that is the swing that we're taking here. That is the lens that we're looking at this book through, is how does perfectionism impact our spirituality, our practices that we know are good for us, but yet we can't seem to stick to. And how can we use our magical practice to actually make peace with our inner perfectionists? And I'm like so excited to talk about this. I can't tell you. I think I've mentioned this book every day for the last like month and a half.
Can confirm. And if you're listening right now, like, this isn't for me, I don't need this, I don't want to have book club, whatever. If you are one of the hundreds, if not thousands of people who have messaged us saying, how do I get over the fear of doing it wrong in my practice, I implore you to stick around for just a minute.
Yeah. Or like, I can't start because I have, so many questions, or I feel like I'm just taking in information and I'm not actually using it because I don't know where to start, right? Like each of these types of perfectionists that are talked about in the book, I literally see one of our listeners in and see in our DMs every day. And now I can't stop seeing it. Like it's totally filtered the way that I talk to my students and talk to, people on Instagram and people who listen to the podcast. And I think it's really, really, really going to just blow your fucking mind. Blow your mind. And I recognize this is probably our longest episode to date. You all said you wanted longer episodes, so this one's for you. If you're sitting here and listening to us and you're feeling overwhelmed, feeling like you have to take all the notes, just hop on over to our Patreon at demystifymagic.com, because we uploaded our notes for you. Not just our notes, but also we uploaded magical rituals that you can do to help move yourself into a more adaptive perfectionist, which we will talk all about what that word means later. But I broke it down into 2-minute rituals, 5-minute, all the way up to 30-minute rituals. So depending on how much time you have, where you want to get started, we've got rituals for you. And we have all of our notes around, the different types of perfectionists that we are going to talk about. So do not fear. All of that's over there. If you join the Patreon, you get access to it. It lives in the Clubhouse. It'll be there for as long as the Clubhouse exists, and you can download it. You can print it out. You can type into it. You can do whatever you want with it. But we wanted to make that for you, mostly because this is the first time we've made an extensive outline of this podcast, and I need you to see it.
Yeah, we need the validation. We need someone to bear witness.
Yes.
To the work that Molly has put in. I'm also really excited to see how you guys feel about this format. And
Mm-hmm.
if we can maybe make like a quarterly book club happen where we all read together and then talk about it in an episode.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we do that already on the Patreon. It's just not the same type of book.
Yeah, and it's not this well put together. There's no notes. There's just stream of consciousness.
Notes, just vibes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no notes,
Mm-hmm.
just vibes.
Mm-hmm. Before we dive into our magic moments, we do want to let you know that we partnered specifically with Libro FM for this episode. We begged them to work with us.
Yeah, quite literally on our hands and knees. Said, please, we love you.
We love you so much. We've been having lots of conversations with y'all about wanting to start to redirect your, financial power away from Amazon, Audible, Kindle, all of that, and back into the hands of small businesses and the local economy. And so Libro FM is an audiobook app. And it's awesome because you literally select your local bookstore of your choice when you sign up. And then all of your purchases, a portion of that goes to that local bookstore. So you can get pretty much all of the audiobooks that you're looking for. The book we're talking about today is on Libro FM. That's where we both listen to it. And they have some really, really awesome like playlists of different authors, and they're just a super progressive, ethical company that we really, really love supporting. And so we're going to leave a link in the description of this episode. If you click that link, you'll not only support Libro FM and your local bookstore, but you will also support this podcast. And so if you are looking for an audiobook app that does not put money in the hands of a bazillionaire and you want to support your girls at Demystify Magic, click that link in the description. We would really appreciate it.
Yeah, Libro FM is something that we've both used for years.
Mm-hmm.
And so the opportunity to work with them was really exciting.
Yay! Okay, before we dive into my heavy, heavy, heavy outline, Madison, what was your magic moment of the week?
My magic moment this week is a moment of like such pure, unadulterated gratitude through something that I learned about my friend. I have a friend, her name is Bridget. She's not listened to this podcast, so I can speak about her freely. And you know that friend just like who always remembers what's going on and always like checks in at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
She is that person. And it's like something that I've always really admired about her and loved about her. She's someone who like when Linda was sick, she always knew like the important dates. She remembered the 1 month anniversary of her passing. She knew the day of her celebration of life and was always like checking in 1 day before, 3 days before, a couple days after, like always just like knew what was going on in my life and was very present for it. And we live far away. And so it's something that's always meant a lot to me. Yesterday, we were texting. Drew has a procedure tomorrow. And we were in a group chat, like the four of us, her husband, Drew, and I are in this group chat together. And she sent a screenshot of her Google Calendar where she had put Drew's procedure in her Google Calendar. And I was like, is that how you always know when to text me about things? She goes, yeah, they have a shared Google Calendar that they put in every time they know that someone has something going on. I could cry talking about it. I cried when she sent it to me.
That's so tender.
So tender and like so much more powerful and meaningful to me even than just her naturally thinking about it. Like that choice of this is important to me. I'm going to make a separate space so I will be reminded. Because we asked her about it. He was like, why is this in your calendar? And she goes, I wanted to wish you good luck in the morning. Oh my God. I sobbed.
That's so also what a good life hack. Because as you were talking, I was like, she must be neurotypical. I could never.
Just fully has the system hacked. It was incredible. Wow. And like that moment of recognizing like the pure active love that she has. And her husband even said a text, because I said, ooh, I'm so sorry for the state of your shared Google Calendar to her husband, because I know it was a little depressing there for a minute because of me. And he said, honestly, it kind of made me feel nice in a weird way because it was such an expression of her love for you to make sure she was mindful. Aww. And that's exactly what it is, like an outward expression of love that I just had so much gratitude for, where I was like, oh, I'm the luckiest person in the world to have the friends that I have.
Oh, I love that.
Good noodles, pure magic.
good noodles. I like to do that with Christmas gifts or
Ooh.
birthday gifts. I keep a note, and anytime someone mentions like, it'll be kind of nice.
That's
Or
a really
like,
good
"Oh, I like
idea.
that." Yeah. Yeah. And then I lose it in my mess of notes.
Naturally.
So it's not that
Might I
helpful.
recommend putting it into a Google Calendar thing for
I
like
know.
November 14th or something, and
I
then
genuinely
add to that.
should. Yeah, that's
and then you
smart.
just order it all.
Oh, that's genius. That's
Okay.
genius.
What was your
Madison
magic
might
moment?
get her Gemagotchi next year. Who
Stop!
knows?
It might be. That's when you'll know this podcast. That Libro FM is really doing it for us.
That's when you know we've made it.
Is when I have the Gemagotchi. What was your magic moment?
My magic moment also has to do with friendship. And it has to do with my friend on the other side of this pod.
No. Oh no! Again?
Yeah.
Don't make me cry again.
Sorry. Madison famously turned me into a Love Island connoisseur last year.
You're all
gives me
welcome.
She gives me access to her Peacock account so that I can watch it. And watch it. I did. I was late to the game last year though. Like I was catching up like late season. This year I've been counting down the days. I had a calendar reminder of the start date. So
Not a calendar reminder.
and it was so fun because Madison and I decided to live react to the episode to each other. And so we were just in Boxer, not watching it live, by the way, because things happened the night that it was live. And we both were like, okay, let's watch it tomorrow. And we both needed that distraction. And so we were on Boxer and we're like, ready? 1, 2, 3, play. Okay, it's an ad. Mine's 40 seconds. How long is yours? 45 seconds. Oh no. And we were just reacting to the episode in real time. And it was so fucking fun. It was so fun to the point where I watched episode 2 without Madison and I was like, do I even like this show? Or do I just like the fact that Madison and I can talk about it constantly?
Yeah. Do I just like the constant stream of conversation and like the live reacting? I'm so excited because I think it'll still be happening like close to the end when you come down next.
Shut up.
It'll be on live
Oh
because I
my
think it's 6
God.
weeks.
Oh my God.
So we'll be a month in.
So
For those who
excited.
don't know, Molly's coming down to stay with me for a weekend because we're doing an event with Gina Luker of the Shabby Creek Cottage. We're doing a live and in-person Project Maelstrom event on Sunday, July 6th at Spellcrafter in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Yeah, come on
If
down.
you're around, come on down. Let's hang out and, make life a little bit harder in the White House.
That's really
2 things
what
I
we're
love
here
to
for.
do.
One thing I love to do, watch Love Island. Second thing, I love to make life harder for the people in the White House.
And you know what? They're neck and neck. They're neck and neck for sources of joy.
Neck and neck, neck and neck. Yeah. So that was my magic moment, was just getting to have that experience with my bestie.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, should we dive in? Are you feeling overwhelmed with this outline?
Oh, Hundo P.
I'm going to make it easy, hopefully, for y'all to keep up with this. So I've basically broken this episode into 2 parts based on how the book is kind of segmented a little bit. So the first part of this episode, we're going to talk about the types of perfectionists and the gifts of perfectionism. Because one thing I really love about this book is it does not use perfectionism as like a negative diagnosis. It's like, there are strengths of your perfectionism, how it helps you show up, stay committed, bring beauty or depth to your spiritual path or your life. But there's also challenges, like ways it might block your magic, keep you stuck, disconnect you from your intuition or joy. And we're going to talk about what those things look like. So the book uses the terms maladaptive and adaptive perfectionism, which I really like. And maladaptive perfectionism is basically where it hinders you, where it becomes a block. And adaptive perfectionism is where you really lean into those strengths. And so this really isn't about fixing yourself. It's more about meeting yourself and your patterns with radical honesty and compassion so that you can make space for a spiritual practice that fits who you are now, not who you think you're supposed to be. So that's kind of the gist of part 1. And then part 2, we're going to talk about how do you, now that you understand what type of perfectionist you are, how it shows up in your life, how do you move from that maladaptive state to that adaptive state? So how do you work with your perfectionism and start to see it less as a flaw and more as a superpower? And really giving you tangible tools that you can do in your spiritual practice and in your life to make that switch happen.
I really loved the verbiage that was used in this book surrounding perfectionism, because I didn't really realize it until the author brought it to my attention when she says, like, all of these books about perfectionism treat it as an illness when it really is like its own version of a superpower. And I don't think that I ever would have called myself a perfectionist until I read the descriptions of what she calls a perfectionist and how they show up, like how that shows up for them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, same. I'm like, I can't be a perfectionist. I'm always someone who's throwing out B- work. That's like my go-to. And I'm like, oh, I am a messy perfectionist. I can get shit done very quickly, but I do not go back and edit that first draft. Do not ask me to make a first draft because there will be no second draft.
The first draft is the draft.
Yeah, well, draft is not in my vocabulary.
Draft. It's not even a draft. It just is what it is.
It is what it is. It is what it is. So to kick this off, we thought we could mutually together, the three of us, Madison, me, and you listening, take the quiz that's in the front of the book. And this quiz will basically help you understand which type of perfectionism is kind of like where you lean strongest. I will say, like, I had almost like a neck and neck situation when I took this quiz. So if you have more than one, then that's okay too.
Yeah, I specifically didn't take the quiz because I wanted to do it
fun.
Live with you. And so I was listening to her descriptions of the different types of perfectionists, thinking like, okay, I have a little bit of that, a little bit of this. Like, I feel like I really can encompass all 5. I want to give it like a sun, moon, rising ranking.
Wait, I love that. Okay, yeah.
Okay, let's all take this quiz together.
Yep.
And then we will, the 3 of us, decide our sun, moon, and rising.
Okay, yeah, love that. All right, let's do it.
Okay. So it'll be like a classic. It's like a Cosmo teen quiz, you know, where there'll be A, B, C, D, and E. And you'll count up how many of each letter you have at the end. So keep track of your A's, B's, and C's. All right. Have you ever displayed an angry outburst at work, such as shouting, banging your desk, or slamming doors? Yes. A. Yes. When I'm frustrated with myself or others, it often shows. B. Never. I'm composed and extremely professional at all times. C. No, it's important to me that people feel I'm easy to connect with, so I try my best to avoid behaviors that may be off-putting to others. D. No, I want to express a lot, but I'm waiting for the right time and figuring out the right way to express it. E. No, I don't struggle with managing anger, but I can struggle with impulse control. I'll share a series of new ideas in a meeting, for example, without thinking them through.
I just know. I'm sitting here and I'm like, ouch, right in the heart.
Yep.
Called out.
Yoinks. Yoinks.
I was like, yeah, these are not me. These are not. Oh.
Ooh, yeah. It was like the first description of a perfectionist archetype in the book. I was like, maybe I do have a little bit of that energy. All right, 2. Which of the below is most likely to bother you? A. Observing that the people around you aren't performing at the highest standard possible. B. Going on vacation with no itinerary. C. When you know someone doesn't like you. D. You've decided you want to paint your living room. You're given a color wheel of 50 paint options and told you need to pick a color in the next 10 minutes. Or E. Being told you can only focus on one goal for the next 6 months.
I'm trying not to react. I'm trying really,
I know.
I'm trying really hard not to react.
I know. And the thing with I'm like, well, all of these really are like viscerally upsetting to me in some different way.
I went with the most viscerally upsetting, like the one where my butt cheeks clenched.
Yeah. That's actually a really great litmus test.
Yeah.
Okay. 3. Which statement best describes you? A. I impose extremely high standards on those around me. I can be punitive with others when they don't meet my standards. B, I'm reliable, highly organized, and I love planning. I sometimes get the sense that other people experience me as uptight. C, I get frustrated when other people's opinions and feelings towards me matter to me. I often feel needy because I want the deepest connections possible. D, I get frustrated with my indecisiveness. I wish I could allow myself to be a little more impulsive about taking clear action towards my goals. And E, I love the rush of momentum at the start of a new project. I feel unstoppable in the beginning, but I struggle to stay focused when I get distracted by other passions. Okay, 4. If someone were giving you praise, they'd be most likely to say, A, that you're great at being direct and keeping razor-sharp focus on the goal at hand. B, that you're great at doing exactly what you say you will do, exactly when you say you will do it, in the exact way you're expected to. C, that you're great at engendering meaningful connections with others. D, that you're great at preparing, asking smart questions, and considering alternative scenarios. Or E, that you're great at imagining possibilities, getting inspired, and generating ideas.
I'm sensing a theme with my answers.
Same. All right, 5. Which statement best describes you? A, I get frustrated by others' inefficiency and lack of focus. I don't care if other people like me. I want to get the job done. B, I consider it somewhat offensive when people make adjustments to the structure and timeline of anything. A meeting, a dinner, a vacation, etc. We should be able to make one plan and stick to it. C, I spend more energy than I want wondering what people think of me. D, I know I have a lot more to offer than I'm currently offering in my relationships, at work, in my community, etc., but I can't unleash my full potential until I take care of a few things first. Or E, I'm always resisting the urge to do things like purchase domain names for businesses I want to start. I have more ideas than I could ever know what to do with. I'm struggling to pick an answer for this one, to be honest.
I know.
So many of them like really, really do resonate.
Which one clenches your butt cheeks?
2 of them do.
Okay. All right.
I wish I could choose 2.
Which one is the one that if you were standing at a crossroads and you had to walk down the path of one versus the other, which one would you not walk down?
Okay. I've got my answer.
Okay. All right.
Okay. 6. I've received feedback along the lines of A, being mean, intense, or intimidating. B, not being spontaneous enough, being too rigid. C, being too much of a people pleaser. D, not taking enough risks, being too indecisive. Or E, being disorganized, scatterbrained, or poor at following through on commitments. Again, I'm like really neck and neck.
Crossroads. Butt cheeks.
Butt cheeks. Butt cheeks. Okay.
Also, like, just remember we're doing sun, moon, rising. So the one that you don't choose could be like your moon sign.
Yeah, for sure. All right. And last question. Question number 7. It is most meaningful to me, A, when someone follows through on what they say they were going to do, when they said they were going to do it, and to the level of quality I expect. B, that I'm able to offer myself and others stability through routine, structure, and predictability. C, when another person works to understand who I am as a person and why what matters to me matters to me. D, that I enter into new opportunities, relationships, jobs, everyday decisions, as prepared and as sure of my decisions as possible. I don't want to commit unless I'm highly confident it's the right choice. Or E, that I lead a passionate life where I entertain as many opportunities as possible to create new projects, develop new skills, travel, grow, and continue exploring.
Okay. So the way that I've broken this down for myself is the one that I have the most, the letter that I have the most is my sun sign. The second letter that I have the most is my moon sign. And the third is my rising, or the one that I'm like, some of those applied to me, but not quite as much.
Okay.
Can you see on the website the profile key for all of them, or just yours?
Well, I answered with 4 of them, so I have 4 of them, but I can read from the book.
Oh, okay.
I want you to guess my sun sign, my sun perfectionist. And I'll guess yours. So, as you go through your answers, you see your little key that you've made for yourself. Whichever letter predominates, that's your perfectionist type. But again, we're going to rank them here. If you had mostly A, I would say your sun sign is an intense perfectionist. Intense perfectionists are effortlessly direct and maintain razor-sharp focus on achieving their goal. Left unchecked, their standards can go from high to impossible, and they can be punitive with others and themselves for not achieving impossible standards. If most of your answers were B, you'd be considered a classic perfectionist. Highly reliable, consistent, and detail-oriented, and they add a stability to their environment. Left unchecked, they struggle to adapt to spontaneity or a change in routine, and they can experience difficulty connecting meaningfully with others. Mostly C, Parisian perfectionists possess a live wire understanding of the power of interpersonal connection and hold a strong capacity for empathy. Left unchecked, their desire to connect to others can metastasize into toxic people-pleasing. Mostly D, procrastinator perfectionists excel at preparing, can see opportunities from a 360-degree perspective, and have good impulse control. Left unchecked, their preparative measures hit a point of diminishing returns, resulting in indecisiveness and inaction. And E, messy perfectionists effortlessly push through the anxiety of new beginnings, are superstar idea generators, adapt to spontaneity well, and are naturally enthusiastic. Left unchecked, they struggle to stay focused on their goals, ultimately spreading their energy too thin to follow through on their commitments.
Okay, I'm going to guess your sun sign is, I think you're a Parisian, messy, classic.
You nailed it almost perfectly. So 43. So I took this virtually. There's a QR code in the book to take the quiz on the internet. And so I did it that way. Spoiler alert. 43% of my answers were Parisian perfectionist, 29% messy perfectionist, and then classic and procrastinator were tied at 14%.
See, I almost said procrastinator.
I would go with procrastinator because I feel like the classic perfectionist is who I can be like very, very deep inside, but it never makes it to the forefront. Yeah. Like I can never, the messy and the procrastinator like overtakes that.
Yeah.
All dreams of the like good side of being a classic perfectionist out the window when it comes to me.
What do you think mine is?
I think that you are a messy perfectionist sun, Parisian perfectionist moon, procrastinator perfectionist rising.
Shut up.
Did I nail it?
You did nail it.
Love that about me.
You did nail it. I will say that 6 of the 8 questions I answered E on. So
really?
Yeah. So I actually didn't have a rising sign. I had to look at it and be like, which one would I have chosen if these were not options?
That's so funny. Yeah, 6 out of 7. Hardcore. Hardcore. Messy perfectionist.
Oh, that's so fun. So we wanted to kind of dive into each of these different perfectionist categories now that you know which one you are, which one's your sun, your moon, your rising, and basically look at the pros and cons of each. So the strengths and the weaknesses, what it might look like in your spiritual practice if you are maladaptive, so working against your perfectionism, versus adaptive, working with your perfectionism. So we're going to kick off with the classic perfectionist. This is the type of perfectionist that wants perfect order. They're very open about being a perfectionist, having a perfect spreadsheet, color organizing their socks. Think Monica Geller from Friends. The pro is that they have an incredible work ethic and patience. They're reliable, they're predictable, they do not like disorder. But when they're maladaptive, the con is that they have difficulty adjusting to any change, big or small. Spontaneity is stressful. And because of that, this itinerary lifestyle doesn't really lend itself to discovering new things, surprise, delight, unexpected pleasures. They struggle to grow in a way that isn't goal-oriented or planned, and they struggle to connect with others due to this perceived lack of vulnerability, right? Like, who wants to be best friends with someone who's perfect all the time?
Yeah, I see the classic perfectionist as like the early 2000s rom-com lead, the girl who is like in her what's the word I'm looking for? In her skyscraper office job with her corner office, and like everything is color coded. She sits down at her perfectly organized desk.
The Elwoods.
Yes, with her perfectly manicured nails, and like everything has its rightful place.
Yes. Yeah, we all know a classic perfectionist. We know because they won't shut up about being a perfectionist.
With all the love in the world to a classic perfectionist, a lot of what we're saying comes from a little bit of jealousy.
Yeah, this is your token neurotypical, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to the spiritual practice, when it's maladaptive in the classic perfectionist sense, this can be when they turn practices meant to bring peace into performance checklists. So the full moon ritual becomes a, 10-step check, 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 check. Okay, I did my full moon ritual, rather than really sinking into the intuitive aspect of the practice.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. This is me realizing live on the podcast that I didn't tell you something.
What?
Which is that I washed my shower curtain on the full moon.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. All right, we can get back to it.
So proud of you. I actually did know that because you let the Patreon know.
Oh, I did. I forgot. I couldn't remember if I had told you or not, but I was very proud of myself.
Yeah, you posted it in the spoiler chat. And I saw it. So
spoiler alert. Clean shower curtain. This is the riveting content you're missing if you're not on our Patreon, is knowing my laundry routine.
Okay, classic perfectionist would hate the detours in this podcast. I don't think the classic perfectionists are the majority of our listeners.
Yeah, we are not the pod for classic perfectionists. We joke about how there's maybe 10 men who listen to this podcast. There's maybe also 10 classic perfectionists, I feel. They probably cannot stand our sidebars.
But honestly, I feel like our podcast would be really, really healthy for a classic perfectionist to listen to, because one of the maladaptive tendencies for a classic perfectionist in their spiritual practice is they abandon intuition for structure. They cut themselves off from spontaneity, messiness, and emotional truth. They avoid spiritual vulnerability, like messy crying during a meditation or unexpected emotions coming up during a spell, because it feels out of control. And I feel like our podcast is really good at just offering a gentle nudge that it's okay if those things happen.
Yeah, I think the classic perfectionist reminds me of the people on TikTok who have these beautifully prepared altars.
Oh, yeah.
That they switch out for, with whatever's going on that week, that they change, do a whole refresh, and everything's perfectly color coded.
Yes.
And, everything's perfectly charmed and glamored, whatever. It's this beautiful aesthetic thing that can create a level of pressure.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, it's the altar becomes a workspace rather than a sacred space.
Yeah, and it becomes if I don't have the energy to do this whole thing, then there's no point in doing it at all.
Yeah, and if it's not going to look good while I do it, then what's the point?
Totally.
But remember, we're not about shaming our inner perfectionists, because classic perfectionists, they have some serious power when it comes to their spiritual practice, because when they are adaptive, they can start to use structure as a sacred container, not a constraint. So rituals become rhythmic, soothing, sustainable. Think about the person that every single morning they get up and meditate without fail, and they know that they have a better day because of that. The person who never misses a full moon or a new moon ritual, and instead of making it a check, 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 they make it this really intuitive, what do I need right now experience, this midpoint of the month check-in for themselves. That is so powerful.
Yeah, I think that this is where the classic perfectionist becomes something that's super admirable for me, and something that I want to lean into, or I want to emulate, because there is it's so impressive to me, people who are able to have that level of structure that a classic perfectionist can have.
Yeah, this is the person that we always see that has that consistent practice that you're how do you do it every single day? How do you stick with it? How do you do that spell every single morning? How do you remember to wash your shower curtain every week?
It makes me think of Anthony, who has such a strong meditative practice and such a strong journaling practice, where he has to text me all the time and say, make sure you journal about that. Because my journal is basically my chaotic voice notes to him, being you'll never guess what just happened during my meditation, whatever. He's write that down.
Yeah, it is very Anthony. I wonder what he would grade himself as.
I'll make him take the test. I'll be with him this afternoon.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it is very much like, I think adaptive perfectionists or classic perfectionists are able to start to embrace imperfections as part of their magic. Like if they forget a step, it's still sacred. Like it's not broken if I don't, do one part of the ritual. Like just starting to let that, like almost like release that pressure gauge a bit.
Yeah, I think that's a sign that you're like in a really good spot if you're a classic perfectionist.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I also think like seeing organization as a spell in and of itself, like that color-coded Excel spreadsheet is magic in and of itself, rather than it feeling like another thing to stress you out over.
Totally. I love that idea of like bringing color magic into something like that. If you're color coding anyways,
Mm-hmm.
make those decisions from a place of magic.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. What do you think? What do you think of the classic perfectionist? Do you have any in you?
My 1B answer was from question 5, which statement best describes you? I consider it somewhat offensive when people make adjustments to the structure and timeline of anything, a meeting, a dinner, a vacation, etc. We should be able to make one plan and stick to it. I think that's my neurodivergency more than it's my perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with especially like a last minute change in plans. And I don't think it's about other people for me. It's about my nervous system.
Yeah.
Where I struggle with change.
The one that I selected for the classic perfectionist is which of the below is most likely to bother you. I almost said going on a vacation with no itinerary because my butt cheeks clenched when I heard that. I was like, oh.
Uh-huh.
But then my butt cheeks also clenched when I had to pick from 50 paint options within the next 10 minutes. And it really, really clenched when I said being told you can only focus on one goal for the next 6 months. So I was like, oof, all of these really hit me.
Yeah, I don't like any of those things.
None of those things are good.
None of that tracks for me.
Okay, so that's the classic perfectionist. If you resonate with that, we encourage you to take a few seconds, just kind of write down what part hit you the hardest of that, like what part resonated the most with you. And we're going to move on to the intense perfectionist. This perfectionist wants control and achievement. This is where perfectionism is tied to identity, being the best, doing it all, pushing through. These people are really, really prone to burnout. They don't talk so much about perfectionism as much as they embody it. So some of the strengths of the intense perfectionist is they're highly, highly driven and goal-oriented. They push themselves and others to succeed. They bring passion and energy to everything they do, and they don't shy away from hard work or intensity.
Yeah, but the con there is that they can set impossibly high standards and then burn out trying to meet them. They can be super self-punishing or hypercritical of themselves and others. They can struggle to feel satisfied or to feel like finished with something. It's hard to say something's done when there's always a way you can make it better. And they may resist rest or slowing down as a sign of weakness.
Yeah, I feel like this is one that I very clearly see showing up in people's spiritual practice, because especially when you have a goal that is so intangible, like spirituality, like connecting with the universe, whatever your goals are for your spiritual practice, there's no gold star, right? There's no, I did the best candle ritual ever, And so intense perfectionists start to put like a lot of pressure on themselves, and they start to approach spiritual growth like a self-improvement plan, or almost like a competition. Like if I'm not meditating every day, I'm failing. If I'm not manifesting XYZ in this timeline, then I'm failing, They kind of like turn rituals into performance metrics. Like, how deep was that meditation? Did I feel something enough? Was that candle spell, good enough kind of thing, which are all like qualifiers that don't exist.
Yeah, it's really hard to have that approach when there is no like definitive way to say that something was good or worked, when results are so intangible as well as like in the same way that the practice is. It creates like a sense of resistance in an intense perfectionist.
Totally. Yeah, and intense perfectionists can also tend to reject practices that require softness, stillness, or surrender. They don't want to let go. They do not want to let go. Foot on the gas, always.
It can also feel unworthy unless they're constantly like doing or producing results from their practice. I see this a lot in people who will ask us like, how do I know for sure that a spell worked?
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, this is why I think that like the magic moments practice is so beneficial for an intense perfectionist,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's harder for someone who is an intense perfectionist to see like the small moments of manifestation, where it's like, if I didn't manifest a winning lottery ticket, then I'm not doing it right.
Yeah.
And so like a gratitude practice could be really, really helpful for someone in that place.
Definitely. Yeah. When intense perfectionists are adaptive, they tend to channel their drive into commitment and transformation. So the consistency of their practice becomes their source of power.
Yeah, they can let spiritual ambition evolve into devotion rather than like a source of achievement.
Yeah. Ultimately, they learn to celebrate the process over the outcome. Like, I showed up, not, I did the best meditation ever. And it really becomes like the practice is almost like dropping into their inherent worthiness rather than trying to prove their worth by doing the best.
Yeah, and I think like a great way for intense perfectionists to kind of like harness that energy is with like fire-based rituals. Anything that's like super quick, super passionate, anything like candle work is great for intense perfectionists. Dancing, any sort of like physical movement is really, really great for intense perfectionists. You can like use that energy that lives within you. They feel very fiery to me.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when I was going through this book, let me know if you had this same question, but when I was going through this book, I struggled to distinguish the difference between the classic and the intense perfectionists. I kind of see them as like very, very similar in my mind. Was that the case for you too, or am I talking out of my butt?
No, I think that there is like a level of similarity there. I think that like this book really focused on how you show up for others rather than like how you show up for yourself in the description, at least like in the quiz.
Yeah.
I can see myself having a lot of intense perfectionist traits, but always internally. Like those really high standards are always for myself and never for others.
Totally.
I'm a Parisian perfectionist to others and an intense perfectionist in my inner world, where I can be very hypercritic.
So you should be an intense moon.
Yeah, but according to the quiz, there's no intensity there because all of those answers were like, how do you treat other people?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
That was very much the lens there. And so I can see, like, that's what I mean when I say, like, I kind of see all five showing up for me. Because intense perfectionist is the only one that I didn't answer any questions with that response. And I think that, like, is where the spiritual lens here is really helpful to kind of like dig a little bit deeper into how they all show up, because it's very much like, for my spiritual practice, I'm an intense perfectionist.
Yeah.
Specifically in the way that I'm very hard on myself.
Totally. Because I got so confused as the difference between classic perfectionists and intense perfectionists, I made us a chart. And I would like us to read these different situations. We'll go back and forth. Would you like to be an intense perfectionist or a classic perfectionist in this example?
I'll be the intense perfectionist.
Okay, great. So the classic perfectionist, kind of the gist is structure, routine, do it right. Intense perfectionist is performance, results, make it meaningful. So I came up with a couple of different scenarios. We're not going to read them all. We'll just read like the first 5.
Okay.
I'm going to read the scenario and then I will tell you what the classic perfectionist, how this shows up as a classic perfectionist, and Madison will read what the intense perfectionist shows up as. Okay. So the first scenario is the daily tarot pull. So the classic perfectionist shuffles 12 times, cuts the deck just right, logs the card in a color-coded tarot tracker, same deck, same spread.
All right. And then the intense perfectionist pulls 3+ cards on impulse, looking for a breakthrough. Might ask the same question 3 different ways until the message lands.
Scenario number 2, they're ordering a sandwich at Subway. The classic.
Sorry, we just took a sharp left.
Well, I wanted like a equal parts mundane and magic.
Love it.
What is your Subway order?
So this is what's hysterical. I used to be a vegetarian. I still order my vegetarian order because that is the first thing I found that I enjoyed at Subway. I would go to Subway when I was a vegetarian, so I get a veggie sandwich with white American cheese. Still get it toasted for some reason.
Yeah.
Want the melted cheese.
Sure.
And then I will do lettuce, spinach, because sometimes that's my only, I've got to pack in the vegetables.
Yeah.
Green peppers, black olives. Did I say onions?
No. Onions.
Onions.
Mm-hmm.
Oil and vinegar, salt and pepper.
We could not have more definitively different veggie delight orders.
I love that for us. Tell me yours.
Mine is Italian herb and cheese bread, naturally.
Oh, I always do the regular white bread.
Of course you do. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we, Glinda and Alphaba.
Uh-huh.
This is where our differences shine. Italian herb and cheese bread. I get double cheese, pepper jack, and shredded cheddar toasted.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know it costs more. I don't care. And then I get lettuce, green peppers, onions, pickles, jalapenos, banana peppers, salt, pepper, extra, extra, extra mayo.
Extra, extra, extra?
If it's not dripping, I don't want it.
Ew.
I used to get sweet onion sauce, but then they changed it, and that threw me. I was so upset. This is where my classic perfectionist is too, at Subway. Like, I think we're all classic perfectionists at Subway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a great point. That's a great point. At any food establishment, like any fast food place, I am a classic perfectionist.
Yeah.
Same thing at Chipotle. I still get a veggie Chipotle bowl because the first time I had Chipotle, I was a vegetarian.
Yeah.
And so I built the bowl that I like as a vegetarian, and I will never change it.
Yeah. My mom is someone that goes to restaurants and she's like, just surprise me, whatever the chef wants to make. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. No, thank you.
No, thank you. Okay. At Subway, the intense perfectionist feels an immense pressure to make the right choice. They debate between tuna or meatball for way too long and may regret the decision before they leave the counter. That is also me. I am somehow both here, because if I ever change anything up, it's like if I'm stuck between two things, I have instant regret the moment I make a choice in any direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. 100%. 100%. I'm someone that every time I go to a Thai food place, I get pad Thai because I'm obsessed with pad Thai. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm like, maybe I'll switch it up. It's the third time I've had pad Thai this month. And then I get something else and I'm like, this was so good, but I wish I had pad Thai.
Uh-huh. Yep. Mm-hmm. Drew and I will do this where, like, if we're stuck between two things, we'll ask the server and be like, okay, which one is your favorite of these two things? They'll say, we'll order that. They'll walk away and be like, I really wish I'd gotten the other thing. Now I know for sure. You know, it would be a really good practice for an intense perfectionist. I don't know if this is like common, but it was really life altering for me when I learned about it. Doing a coin flip to make a decision between two things. Not because you'll go with what the coin says, but because it teaches you what you really want.
Yes. Yes. When it's in the air, you're like, ooh, I hope it's heads.
Uh-huh. And then you're like, ooh, tuna.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay, scenario number 3. We're going to post a whole list of scenarios in the guidebook that we made for the Patreon, by the way. So if you like these and you want to read more. This is a full moon ritual. For the classic perfectionist, they have a step-by-step checklist printed and laminated, matches the candle color to the moon sign.
Ooh, love that. The intense perfectionist decides to do an elaborate release ritual with journaling, chanting, a burn bowl, and a surprise inner child healing bonus round.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But remember, the intense perfectionist does not like vulnerability, so they are keeping their emotions in lock during that whole inner child healing.
Yep, and I would imagine an intense perfectionist is more of a solitary practitioner.
Oh, probably, yeah.
You know, because that extreme emotional release can only happen when you're by yourself.
Mm-hmm, if at all. Okay, mundane scenario number 2, planning a vacation. The classic perfectionist creates a spreadsheet with color-coded tabs, flight info, meals, outfits, backup outfits, emergency crystals.
And the intense perfectionist wants to squeeze transformation into the trip. You got to hit at least 6 destinations, heal some trauma, and find your purpose in a hot spring. Again, I relate. I resonate here.
Maybe you're more of an intense perfectionist than you thought. Like an internal. You're like a moon. Yeah. You're an intense moon.
Intense moon. I think that really might be what it is, because I really do present Parisian.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Intense on the inside and then messy rising.
Yeah. Wait, I love that. Okay. Altar setup is our final scenario here. The classic perfectionist, everything is symmetrical. They cleanse their items regularly. They label their crystals. Low-key panics if the candle wax drips unevenly.
Well, the intense perfectionist builds an altar in a whirlwind of inspiration. They use 9 candles, 2 herbs, and a lock of their own hair, and then they don't touch it again for a month. Again, it's me. It's a me.
You're learning so much about yourself. I hope you listening are also having these moments where you're like, wow, that is me. Because that's how I felt through this entire book.
Yeah, and I think that like talking about it through the lens of spirituality is what helps me kind of contextualize it better, because so much of the book is through the lens of like women in the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like it's very like entrenched in office culture,
Yeah.
which is great because I think that is like what most people where most people experience their perfectionism is at work. And so it makes sense that those questions are like through that lens. But because I don't have like I've never really worked a corporate job, I don't know. Maybe I would be like intense in the workplace. Like maybe I would have these really high expectations of others. Yeah. I hope not, but maybe I would, you know? And I just don't know because I don't have that experience maybe for the best.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about your sun sign now. The Parisian perfectionist. They want to be perfectly liked. Now, the Parisian perfectionist is named for the way that French women seem effortlessly kind of beautiful, put together, but behind the scenes, they work a lot harder than they'd like to admit to give off that perception. And so the Parisian perfectionists, they crave being liked, loved, and understood. They're the most likely to seem not a perfectionist from the outside.
That resonates really hard for me. And I think that's why I was like very resistant to the idea that I'm a perfectionist at all. Mm-hmm. And then hearing her describe the Parisian perfectionist, I was like, oh, and that's me, and that's me, and that's me. Anybody who knows me well would describe me as a people pleaser. Mm-hmm. It was actually the whole theme of this morning's therapy session.
But remember, all of these perfectionist types have strengths. So the Parisian perfectionist is highly empathetic and relational. They're really good at supporting others and kind of being in tune with other people's emotional needs. They can create really beautiful communal connective spaces, which you are incredibly good at. And they're often the glue in group rituals or circles.
Yeah, I really loved talking about the pros or like reading about the pros, because I realized how much of that is a strength of mine. And it's like the biggest piece of feedback that I get at the store, especially within the context of our events, is that I am really good at building community. Mm-hmm. And so that was cool to see that as a direct result of the kind of perfectionist I am, rather than like something separate of like, oh, this is just maybe like a downside to this thing that brings really good shit into my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 So on the other side, the weakness is when they're maladaptive, Parisian perfectionists, they overextend themselves trying to be everything to everyone. They lose their own desires in the process of people pleasing. They need external validation to feel worthy, and they struggle with solo spiritual practices or inner work that isn't performative. Madison's hiding.
Validation is a pretty big word in my vocabulary.
Yeah, these are the people that when they do the ritual, they want the good job. They want someone to say good job. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't count if they tell themselves good job.
Yeah, they can also often abandon personal intuition in favor of group consensus. Like, what would my coven think? What do they want to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Talking about the maladaptive Parisian perfectionist now, to say that 10 times fast. Yeah. Yeah. They're always trying to make their spiritual practice about others' expectations. So curating the right aesthetic or posting instead of participating, avoiding vulnerability unless it is pre-approved or praised. And they burn out from constantly giving without receiving replenishment.
Mm-hmm. I know that's right.
I know that's right.
I love the call to like group work as well. You know, that is something, especially like the struggle with solo spiritual practices or inner work that isn't performative. I feel like I shine in the group ritual that we lead at the store. Mm-hmm. That is where I feel like I do some of my best spiritual work and some of my best like work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so interesting to see that, because it is like both a pro and a con for me. It's that level of like, oh, I am really great at creating community. I can create a really great experience. And like that facilitation, I'm really good at the facilitation. That's something that I've really been like learning recently as a strength of mine. So it's like a very cool, well-timed episode for me as I'm like discovering the strength that I have. And I'm like, oh, this is a part of my perfectionism that is actually really cool. But then on the other side, maybe like a call to, hey, you could do some stuff on your own that isn't in service to somebody else.
Oh, totally. Yeah, this is me as well, for sure. Like anytime I do a spell or magical practice for myself, I'm always like, oh, I should share this. I should make a reel about this. I should talk about this on the podcast.
I should make a post about this.
Yeah, I should post about this. I should post about this, to the point where like there have been times where 100% of my spiritual practice is posted on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's so hard too, because then it's like if a post doesn't do well, I'm like, well, that spell sucked.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, that like desire to share. And I think that is inherently a good thing.
Oh yeah, it's so powerful. It's when you don't create space also for just yourself to receive from yourself that we shift into that kind of negative side of it. But when a Parisian perfectionist is adaptive, they turn their people pleasing into a sacred service. So they give from that full cup, not from obligation, and not to the point of depletion.
Yeah, they can let their spiritual practice be a way to reconnect with themselves before anybody else. It's like the spiritual put your oxygen mask on before putting on for others.
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately, like when you do that, you're building rituals that feel really authentic rather than performative. And they're often really centered from the heart. Like I feel like Parisians, whenever I kind of think of the energy body of the Parisian, the heart chakra is just like glowing.
Mm-hmm. And then those Parisian perfectionists can find a balance between practices that center connection with others versus practices that connect with themselves, and find like equal importance and joy and like nourishment in those.
And even practices that they connect with other people start to become nourishing rather than depleting. Like they're not performing anymore. They're allowing themselves to be held by the group as well.
Yeah, totally. And I think when a Parisian perfectionist is at their most adaptive, they embrace the truth that their worth doesn't depend on being perceived as nice. Which is a tough pill for me to swallow.
Yeah. It's why the hate comments get us harder.
That is, I think, the hardest part of owning a business for me is saying no to people. You know, the thing that I have more resistance to than anything is hiring, because of how many people want a job at Spellcrafter, and I cannot give them all a job at Spellcrafter.
Yeah.
And so I just never want to hire anybody, or never say that we're hiring, because the idea of like calling somebody and saying, I'm sorry, we went with another candidate, makes me want to like rip out my insides.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. It's why whenever we get a comment on this podcast that is like even slightly critical, we're like, that's it. Throw in the towel. This podcast sucks. Everybody hates it.
Someone told me we say like too much 2 years ago, and I still think about it.
I literally mentioned that the other day to someone.
I think about it weekly.
So if you resonated with the Parisian perfectionist, or if it's in your big three, go ahead, take a second, write down or think about what part hit you the hardest. We're going to move into the Molly perfectionism.
Yeah, let's talk about your sun sign.
My sun sign, the messy perfectionist. We want freedom, but still want to do it right. This type is a chaotic perfectionism. Big dreams, strong ideas, lots of starts, not a lot of follow through. They care really deeply, but structure is not their strong suit. This is like, the way I always think of this is you kind of start and stop your spiritual practice. Like 1 week you're into tarot, the next week you're into traditional Chinese medicine, then you're into the chakras, then you're into this, then you're into meditation, then you're into that. And then like a month later you're like, what is my spiritual practice? Like I haven't touched any of those things that I was interested in.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But I really love a messy perfectionist. You can be super creative, inspired, always full of ideas. You're always willing to try new things, experiment. You bring a lot of emotional honesty and spontaneity to your practice. And something I noticed this in you hardcore is messy perfectionists have a really great access to their intuition.
Yeah, their intuition guides them.
You were someone that I watched, like, I was very privileged to have a front row seat to your kind of like witchy unraveling, your unfolding, your opening up. And I have never seen someone so quickly gain such full access to their intuition, if that makes sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
you were able to open up psychically very quickly, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so cool. The way that I love and was really inspired by how messy perfectionists are talked about in the book is not just, you know, the creativity and inspiration full of ideas for themselves, but they end up being an accelerator for other people's creativity and inspiration. And I really do see that in myself. Like I was literally, oh my God, I was on a call with a bunch of tech people the other day because we're building like an organizational system on the back end of my business to like organize all of our students and like where they're at in their certification process and whatever. It's like extremely techie and boring, and I don't understand half the stuff we're doing. But anytime they did something that I saw would make me or my team's life easier, I would go, oh, it can do that? And you can't see me, but I'm waving my hands like doing jazz hands. And literally after like the third time, one of the tech people who like I really thought didn't like me because she was so serious, she was like, Molly, I just think it's really cool that you get excited about this system working for you because none of our other clients do that. And it makes us really excited.
I love that. The messy perfectionist is really like, this is how I see my mom. And this is where she and I are very similar. My mom calls herself an idea factory.
Yes.
Where, and like she'll reference especially like something, she'll dream a lot of like new ideas and stuff. And so she'll call me in the morning and be like, I was working all night, and she'll list out all of the ideas that she came up with in her literal sleep. Yeah. I'll wake up to emails from this woman that went through at 2:00 in the morning. Yeah.
That's me voice noting to you. Literally, like I was in the car for like 2 hours yesterday, like on and off. And I think I sent like so many messages to Madison. I was like, hey, so you know how to use a Cricut. Can you use those to put labels on like a 7-day candle? And then I was like, I have a new life goal. Here's what it is.
Here's this new thing that fuck the Agatha Christie novels was where that one started.
Yeah. Yeah. The downside is though, so a lot of times messy perfectionists, they're really in love with starting, the energy behind that momentum of starting. And once it stops being exciting, we drop off. And so we start and then we start and then we start and then we start. So we really struggle with consistency and follow through. We kind of swing between, oh, I'm obsessed with this practice and oops, I forgot I ever did that. And then we feel a lot of shame for not finishing what we started and can overwhelm ourselves with too many spiritual to-dos because we have so many interests. We're like, okay, well, I have to finish everything I started, which means now my practice has to be 52 things long because I want to do some of this and some of that and some of this and some of that. It's like going to a buffet and like putting just a little bit of everything on your plate. And so every time you take a bite, you're like, that's not enough. And then at the end, you have like a really weird unbalanced plate. And you're like, what the hell did I just eat?
Yeah, there's a lot of like messy perfectionists might need to kill a few of their darlings.
Yeah.
I know. If you are a maladaptive messy perfectionist, you might notice that you are constantly chasing new spiritual modalities without grounding in any one practice. You might get overwhelmed trying to do everything at once and then just like avoid everything for a few weeks. You could view inconsistency as personal failure, which could lead to a few shame spirals. And your practice could become a cycle of guilt and overcorrection.
This was a hundo P me like a few years ago. I was just like searching the next thing. I was like, oh, yoga, meditation, Reiki, TCM, acupuncture, acupressure. I was like, maybe I'll go to acupuncture school. Like literally at one point I was like, how can I manifest an acupuncture school coming to Maine so that I can also learn acupuncture so that I can do a workshop that is yin yoga, meditation with TCM, acupuncture, acupressure, but also Reiki with crystals. I was like, how can I do that?
And it'll be a crisp 90 minutes.
But when I feel like I'm much more adaptive now because as I read some of those, I'm like, no, I feel like I've really gotten past that shame spiral part in my spiritual practice. The rest of my life, we're still working on it.
We're still working on it.
We're still working on it. Listen.
It's okay.
But the adaptive, messy perfectionists, they're able to embrace their cyclical nature. So treat each return to a practice as sacred, not a setback. I always say, like, my practice comes in seasons. Some seasons I want to meditate. Some seasons I want to work with my crystals. Some seasons I want to do more Reiki. And it really is kind of like leaning into that season rather than fighting against it. And because of that, we can build flexibility in the routines. So come as you are altars, multi-sensory tools, 5-minute spells, mundane magic.
Kind of our whole thing here.
And we've talked about this before, but creating a menu for your rituals so that you can choose what you need in the moment rather than creating a checklist. They can really view their curiosity as sacred data, not a flaw. So like following their curiosity becomes real strength, and letting their intuition guide them rather than shaming themselves into structure is ultimately, like, I think what makes Messy Perfectionist so fucking powerful.
Mm-hmm. Messy Perfectionist really makes me think of Linda. She was the perfect adaptive messy perfectionist. She had a really strong, grounded spiritual practice that was so intuition led, and had, like, structure was just not a word in her vocabulary, and she had no fucking shame about it.
Yeah.
She did things as she wanted, as felt good, that it feels even like wrong to call her a perfectionist, because I don't even know if that really was her. But like when you list off these adaptive qualities, I'm like, that is exactly how Linda was.
Yeah, I feel like it's so interesting because for the last almost 10 years, the first like 10 minutes of my day while I'm drinking my coffee are my spiritual practice. And I think for a long time, I kind of shamed myself around, like, I feel like I should be doing this and this and this during those 10 minutes. But for the last 10 years, I've really made it my mission that I don't rush through my first cup of coffee in the day. And I'm always consistent with that. What I do for those 10 minutes depends. Like right now I'm in a meditation season. So I'm picking up my Calm app. I'm doing meditation while I'm drinking my coffee. For a while, it was like movement. I have never taken a walk with my coffee. I'm not going to lie to you. But sometimes I might do a little stretchy stretch in bed, you know? I might do a little movie move. Sometimes I'll read a spiritual book. For a while, I did a card pull. Sometimes I did some crystal work. And I think sometimes I look at that time of my life and I'm like, I'm so inconsistent with my spiritual practice because it doesn't look the same every single day. But the fact that I carve that space out for myself first thing in the morning is the consistency, and is like why I feel so deeply connected to myself and my spiritual practice, and ultimately like sets myself up for the day. So this was a huge mindset shift for me.
100%. Having the gift of time and the gift of intention, that is the consistency. How you spend that time, no matter if it's like your 10 minutes in the morning, it's 30 minutes in the evening, it's you take a second during your lunch break, whatever it is, that is what a grounded practice looks like. It doesn't look like doing the same thing every day.
Yeah. And I think once I started to lean into that and understand that, I feel like I became a much more powerful, like, not just practitioner, but also teacher. Like, I was able to be adaptive in my Parisian perfectionist too, because I started teaching other people that same message. And so it was really nice to see that validated in the book and be like, see, someone believes this other than me. So if you resonated with the Messy Perfectionist, take a minute here and just reflect on what part hit you the hardest. And we're going to move into our fifth and final type of perfectionist, which is the procrastinator. They want to get it perfect. These are perfectionism in disguise. These are the folks who rarely call themselves perfectionists because they probably use other words. Maybe lazy, unfocused, just can't seem to start. But underneath that is this deep fear of not doing it right. And I love the way the book described this, where she talked about how when an idea is an idea, it's inherently perfect in our mind. It's the moment we bring it into reality that it becomes inherently imperfect. And that is what stops procrastinators from getting started. Is they're like, I want this thing to be perfect. And the only way it can be perfect is when it exists in my mind. When it exists in the real world, then I have to face the facts that it's not going to be perfect. And there's a fear around that.
Totally. I feel this hard comes through for me. Like, this is my fear response.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of really beautiful things about procrastinator perfectionists.
Mm-hmm.
They're super thoughtful, deep processors, deep feelers, deep thinkers. They're super insightful and emotionally intelligent. They often have this like really rich inner world and this like really powerful imagination that makes them super sensitive to nuance and symbolism and like subtle energy.
Yeah. I feel like this is, and I'm sorry, I might be calling you out, dear listener, but this is the person who finds our podcast, binges every single episode, and still doesn't take action.
Mm-hmm. For sure. This might just be because we taught our wands class last night. Anthony and I were doing like a little tarot series. This person, the procrastinator perfectionist, gives like 2 of wands energy. It's that moment of like you have the literal world in your hands. You're observing. You're like taking this waiting moment, but you got to step forward.
And the downside of kind of the weakness of the procrastinator perfectionist is they often delay starting their spiritual practice out of fear they'll do it wrong. I feel like we get DMs every single day from people who are like, I just got one the other day where it was like, I really wanted to do the spell, but someone told me I can only do it under the waning moon, so I don't want to get it wrong. What do you think? And I was like, the moon doesn't give a shit.
Who told you that? The moon?
Yeah. Yeah, do it whenever you want. But they can often feel overwhelmed by too many choices and too high standards. So it's like, there are too many things I could do, so I don't know which one to pick. I want to pick the right thing to start with. And so they don't choose anything. They often avoid commitment out of this like paralysis of having too many choices, and they struggle with consistency and trust in themselves when they are maladaptive.
Yeah. And when they're maladaptive, they can also put off practices until they feel they're quote unquote ready, which is probably never. They don't trust their intuition because they haven't earned it yet by having these like big moments of psychic prowess. They see spirituality as something that they should be doing, but they can't access. And they can internalize that inconsistency as a sign of spiritual failure.
Yeah. I see this show up so much with people who they say like, I know all the things I should be doing. Why can't I start?
Yeah.
And honestly, when I first listened to this was the moment in the book where I was like, oh, our listeners need this. Because I was like, this is where my antennas tuned into like, these are all types of, like, we see all of these in our DMs. We see all of these different types of perfectionists. And so I'm really excited to move into part 2 of this episode where we're going to talk about like, how do you actually get through this? Like, how do you like, I just loved that this came so early in the book that I was like, oh, there's going to be an answer. Like, I'm going to be able to give them an answer, because I think so often like the answer we're told when we're in this procrastinator perfectionist is like, just start. And that's not helpful because we already know that. But the truth is, when procrastinator perfectionists are in an adaptive state, they learn how to take imperfect action, and they see that as an act of self-trust. They start to build micro practices that require no setup or planning, like touch the floor and breathe. See that as a ritual, like cleansing your energy while you go to the bathroom. They reframe delays as information, not evidence of failures, and they start to create tiny rituals with built-in success. Maybe it's one word, one breath, or one card. And they start to make peace with good enough.
I love the idea that good enough becomes like this sacred phrase, you know? It's like, I think that can have its own form of negative connotation. We're like, ugh, good enough, you know? And like, I'm dropping it, I'm throwing it away. But to kind of have like that mental reframe around that idea and say, oh, that's good enough.
Yeah.
And I'm satisfied.
I've always loved the phrase good enough. I've always loved the phrase good enough with a contextualizer. So there was this kid in my high school, and I will never forget it. He was dating the most beautiful girl in school, like the girl that we all had a crush on, the girl that even if you thought you were straight, you were like, am I? And I once heard him, he was like building something, and he was like, well, good enough for the girls I date. And he just walked away from it. And I was like, yes.
That's incredible. That's a level of confidence I aspire to.
I know. Or if you want a different one, my dad, who worked for the government for most of his life, his phrase is good enough for government work, which every day that bar gets lower. So I use that one a lot.
Truly. We do. That's become like a mantra for us.
So if you resonated with this procrastinator perfectionist, take a minute, just let it sink in. Maybe sit with what part hit you the hardest. We're about to move into part 2 of kind of how you can, now that you know your perfectionist tendency and where it shows up, how it shows up in your spiritual practice, what you can do to move from a maladaptive state to an adaptive state. But first, we're going to take a little break.
This episode is sponsored by Libro FM.
Listen, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Reading fairy smut is a valid form of sacral chakra healing.
But let's face it, sometimes reading with your eyes is not the vibe. Sometimes you want to tap into your inner feral energy while doing the dishes. That's where audiobooks come in.
And no one does it better than Libro FM, our favorite audiobook platform where you actually own your audiobooks and your money goes to support your fave local indie bookstore, not some billionaire's rocket fuel.
And right now, it's the perfect time to restock your emotional aphrodisiac library because Libro FM is doing a BOGO sale through June 22nd. You get 2 audiobooks for 1 credit from their curated list.
And if you are new to Libro FM and you click the link in the show notes, you can use the code SWITCH when you sign up and you get 3 books for the price of 1. That's 6 steamy, plot-rich, magic-drenched audiobooks if you stack it with the BOGO deal.
You could heal your sacral chakra, regulate your nervous system, and awaken your inner fae in 1 moon cycle. Just saying.
Click our link in the episode description to start your journey. Pick your fae, pick your shadow daddy, support your local bookstore, and say yes to sacral realignment through magical softcore chaos.
This is energy work with wings and leather. You're welcome.
And thank you to Libro FM for sponsoring this episode. And now back to our feature programming. So, really, this was the part of the book that I had to have Madison tell me to just close the book and put it down and just let it be good enough. This was where my procrastinator perfectionist was starting to come out because I was like, there's so much juicy stuff in this book. The entire book is highlighted. I have a color-coded annotation bookmark. Like, it's genuinely, I was like, I can't record because I'm not ready because I haven't wrote down every perfect quote that I want to share with our listeners.
We sat down and got on Zoom and the words, "I'm afraid of you right now," left my mouth. That's where we were at emotionally preparing for this episode.
So the way that I want to break it down for you is kind of give a very high level overview of the last 5 or so chapters of the book. These are really about like, how do we solve for this? How do we work with our perfectionists? And then we're going to break down some really specific tools that you can bring into your practice based on your type of perfectionist. We're going to talk about which element you can lean into to help balance and become more adaptive in that perfectionism, and some really magical things that you can just add to your day that are really going to help you out. And a reminder, if you want all the notes from this episode, we have them up on the Patreon in the Clubhouse. And we also have a list of different rituals for each of the different types of perfectionism. So you can kind of build a menu based on that.
Yeah.
One thing I really loved about chapter 5 in this book, which is really where we start to move into like, what do we do about it? Basically like, okay, I got it. I'm a perfectionist. I'm on board. I'm messy. What do I do about it? And I smiled so big when I read this because I remember I was on a run and I was listening to the audiobook and I literally stopped and I was like, holy fuck, this is what we're already teaching. Like, and the biggest thing was self-compassion. Self-compassion is one of the tools that moves us from maladaptive to adaptive. Seeing that perfectionism isn't itself the issue. Seeing that we are not inherently flawed because we are a messy perfectionist or a procrastinator or whatever. And instead seeing how we respond to mistakes, right? It's how we respond. Instead of learning, a lot of perfectionists, they self-punish. They beat ourselves up. We have a lot of negative self-talk, like, why couldn't I do this? Or so-and-so can do this. Why can't I? Or blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I think the most powerful thing in this entire book is the way that she lays out the positives that come along with each perfectionist type.
Mm-hmm.
That is the most healing thing for me in here.
Yeah.
And if you're struggling with self-compassion, I would implore you to pick up this book and read the positives that she associates with each perfectionist over and over and over again. I think that has been the greatest tool for me in unlocking some of that self-compassion, because when you see your perfectionism as a thing that brings both joys and pitfalls, it's easier to see the trade-off that you make of like, I have to have these things, I have to work through these things to have these joys.
Yeah.
You know, to have this great empathy and community building skills that I have, it's natural that I'm going to fall into this version of myself that cares a lot what other people think. It's easier for me to have compassion for myself when I see it as a facet of this thing that I love about myself.
Yeah. Yeah. The visual that came to mind as you were saying that is like if I were growing a garden, and say I have a garden that is growing some flowers and some weeds, right? I can either sit there and go like, ugh, these weeds keep growing in this garden. I give up. I throw in the towel. I'm going to let the weeds take over and just like be pissed at myself because the flowers are getting choked out. Or one by one, using self-compassion, I could pull that weed out. And I could see like this weed is there because this soil has the nutrients needed for this flower to grow, but also this weed to grow.
Yes. And continuing on your gardening metaphor, the only reason we have weeds is because we have distinguished, like as a society, what is the more acceptable thing to have growing in your garden.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And so even like maybe releasing a little bit of that like pro and con energy and just saying like, oh yeah, this is just a part of who I am. I can learn from the mistakes that I might make when I'm operating from the place that I don't always love.
Yep. Yeah. And like how we always talk about the tiger of your nervous system. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between you being mean to yourself because you fell into your perfectionist tendencies and a tiger chasing you. And so when we are mean to ourselves, we trap ourselves in shame, we, self-punish ourselves, we feed that tiger. But when we express self-compassion, we treat ourselves like the struggling, resilient human being that we are. It actually boosts our emotional flexibility, allows us to tap into our creativity, and reassures our mind and body that we're not actually being chased by a tiger.
Yeah, and then it's almost like the tiger is walking at your side, like fueling that. Yeah, it's like your pet tiger.
Aw. Yeah. I realized I made a Raja reference and Madison still hasn't seen Aladdin.
Listen, I know the things. I know the characters.
It's okay.
I use context clues.
We're not allowed to give Madison shit for not seeing Aladdin because I haven't seen Drag Race. So that was a decision we made as a team. And
that was
I'm
solidified in
respecting
Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you. There are so many references that I make that Molly does not pick up on. And I just feel like we collectively as a community have focused on mine. And that feels unfair.
I'm sorry. The Parisian perfectionist. God forbid. We all zoom in on your faults.
Right? I'm like, you guys are really not helping me play to my strengths. I want you all to like me. And you're talking about movies I haven't seen, but then I'm also like authority avoidant. So I'm like, oh, you're telling me what to do. I'm not going to do it. So now I'll never watch Aladdin and it's all your fault.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much.
But I'm having a lot of self-compassion about it.
Me too. So self-compassion is basically like big name of the game. I really, 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 really love that chapter. I just like, it was one of those where so Madison and I both listened to this audiobook at like 2x speed. I was at like 1.7 at some points, but...
Don't out me like that.
Sorry. She does talk slowly. But chapter 5, I actually slowed down to 1.5 because I really wanted to like integrate it. So that's how you know it's a good chapter.
When I turned down I think I did the exact same thing around this part of the book too. I was like,
so
hold on, I
funny.
need a minute.
Chapter 6 is all about really prioritizing the process over the outcome. So shifting perfectionism and working with our perfectionism from a performance or an outcome base to a practice. And I really love how the author reframes failure as an opportunity, like failing forward rather than hitting a stop sign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She really emphasized like the shifting from goal-based thinking to intent-based.
Yeah, she talks a lot about intention.
Focusing on presence. The word presence
Mm-hmm.
was really, really like a huge part of this book. And it was something that like got me thinking about my level of presence of like that is a form of a solution as well, is to get out of the like past or present thinking and just be where I am in the part of the process that I'm in and enjoying that.
Yes. 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 And then I love, as an OCD girly, I love chapter 7, new thoughts to think to help you stop overthinking it. Love it. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
These are basically mindset shifts she gives to disrupt the perfectionist cycle. So when you feel yourself kind of spiraling into that negative self-talk, for instance, swapping the words better or worse for different, like, was this meditation better or worse than last time? It was different. Okay.
Yes.
And then I really loved, she talked about how happiness is experienced in 3 stages, but so is stress. It's like the anticipation of joy or the anticipation of stress, and then actually experiencing it, and then the after effects. I thought that was so cool.
I loved that reframe around, I can't remember if it was in this chapter or somewhere else, where she talks about like the things that you force yourself to do, like getting coffee with that like one acquaintance that like is still holding on, but you guys just like don't jive. And you tell yourself like, oh, it's just an hour of my life. It's not just an hour of your life. It's the anticipation. It's the stressing about it. It's the dreading it the whole night before. And then it's the hours afterwards that you spend on the phone with your other friend talking about like, oh my God, I can't believe, like, why did I do that?
Yes.
She did X, Y, and Z. He did this, like, whatever. It becomes, it like takes over so much more of your time. And it was such a good reminder for me of like the importance of my boundaries as a Parisian perfectionist. My boundaries are the first thing to fall. And the only way to have like the only way that boundaries work is when you uphold them. And that is like your job. That's your thing to do. And I really loved that she like kind of pulled that rug out from under me of like, it is not just 15 minutes. It is not just an hour. It is not just the time spent doing the thing that you're sacrificing your boundaries and your needs for. It is all that other time as well.
Yeah. And when I was listening to this chapter, I was also like on my Kindle at night reading a book that I really didn't like, but I was 35% of the way in. So I was like, well, I might as well finish it. I gotta know how it ends.
Naturally.
Yeah, naturally. Even though everyone on Instagram, I like polled people and I was like, what do you guys think? Should I end it? And I had a bunch of people like, knowing you, I don't think you're gonna like the ending. Like really, like people who knew me really well were like, Molly, I really, A, it doesn't get better, and B, you're really gonna hate the ending. And I was like, cool.
And then did you?
No.
Or did you stop reading it?
Because when I was listening to that story of like the coffee with a friend, I'm like, oh my God, that's me with this book right now. Because all day I'm like, I gotta finish that book. And then I'd find myself scrolling rather than reading, even though I really love to read. And then I'd be reading it and I'm like, when is this gonna end? And then the next day I'd be like, I gotta go back and read again. So I DNF'd that book after I read this part of the book.
Good for you.
Thank you.
I'm very proud.
And I don't regret it. And then there's another
Snaps for that.
There's another mindset shift that I love. She calls it a feather's weight more weighs a lot. We call it 2 minutes a day is more effective than 60 minutes once a month, where it's basically like healing is hard work and it doesn't have to be done all at once. Like a little bit goes a long way, and consistency is more powerful than duration, which we say all the time. Like I said, like the biggest eye opener for me listening to this book was like, oh my God, we already inherently teach so much of this. And I think just like giving new verbiage to it and giving yourself permission to almost like see yourself in a box in a way helps you see that there's a path out of the box.
Yes. And I think hearing it with that clinical verbiage from like a therapist perspective about like normal mundane life events is a really helpful starting place, that when you kind of like apply those things to the more mundane aspects of your life, it's easier to apply it to your spiritual practice, and vice versa.
Yes.
You know, if you start and create these practices in your spiritual practice, then you take those foundations with you out into the rest of your life.
Yes, yes. Another mindset shift from this chapter I really loved is the difference between a struggle and a challenge is connection.
Oof.
Oof. And she talks all about how this is the tiger thing again, how when you're isolated, whether you know it or not, you don't feel safe. Right? Like that wiring that we have when we were being chased by saber-toothed tigers is the same wiring we had when we needed to stay in groups in order to physically survive the elements, have enough food to eat, etc. And so that community wiring is within us. It's within our nervous system. And I love that idea of like when you're struggling with someone, like sometimes all you need is to make a connection and then you can start to become more adaptive. I just love that. I also really love, as a trauma sensitive girly and a girly who preaches trauma sensitivity, I love how the author approached trauma in this book. Like when I was listening, I was like, okay, but how are we going to apply this to like people with trauma? And then she'd be like, what about when it comes to trauma? And she'd have a whole section and I'd be like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. It's so cool to read from a therapist's perspective.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And then we're not going to go through all the mindset shifts, but the other one that I thought was really important is energy management beats time management.
That really fucking, like, that was huge for me.
Yeah.
And I think other like self-employed people will understand where I'm coming from, is that I have this like attachment to 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I have this attachment to like, if I have not started working by 9 a.m. and I don't stay working, not so much anymore, but like it really, if I don't stay working in a traditional sense from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., I get weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
It disrupts my nervous system because I think that this is like the time that I'm supposed to be spending working. And if I am working like way later than that, I'm out of balance. Like I don't have a good work-life balance. And if I am not working like early enough, I'm like, oh, you're lazy. You're shirking your responsibilities, like whatever. And so I think that I have to spend these like very specific 8 hours in the day doing traditional work tasks. And it is so unproductive for the kind of work that I do that like some of my best thoughts happen when I am doing traditionally non-work things, and I will get inspired at 7, 8 o'clock at night. I used to live really close to Hedgewich, our first store. If you're a new listener, my family has 2 stores. I used to live literally within walking distance to Hedgewich, and sometimes I would walk over like in the middle of the night to develop candle recipes.
I remember those days.
And now I just have like little bottles of essential oils at home, and it's much more fun when I get to do that in the middle of the day. But that time frame and the understanding of like the energy meter rather than the time that it takes was so like life altering for me, of like, oh, it's not that you have a set 8 hours in the day. It's that you have a set amount of energy, and certain energy goes, like certain things require more or less energy. And so when she said, it's not, do I have the time to do this? It's, do I have the energy to do this? And what you want is not more time. It is more energy.
Yes.
Oh, that was like a punch to the stomach, because it's so true.
Yeah. The visual I kept having was like in Stardew Valley, you have the same, time in the day. You have a full day. But if you spend the first like couple of hours of your day, like cutting down trees, then you're out of energy before noon. And you just pass out. Versus if you spend the day like running around and, running errands for people and like talking to everyone and like foraging, you could go all night. And I feel like this really impacts my Parisian perfectionists a lot, because especially when it comes to like my Reiki training program, people always ask me like, can you open more trainings? Can you open more spots? And the reason why it's limited and I only run it a couple of times a year is because of my energy management, because I've learned that like I can only do so many attunements. I can only create so many certificates. I can only put so much love into this training when it has that kind of containment to it. Otherwise, I'm just like burning the candle at both ends and I'm no use to anyone when that happens.
I had my first like real instance of that with this class that Anthony and I are doing, because it's a hybrid class. We have as many people as we can fit in the library for in-person spots, and then we had a set number of online spots. And the first class, we kept it a little conservative in terms of like numbers, because it's something that we haven't done before. And I didn't want, like, I was very aware that this was going to be a new experience of like managing these two groups of people, whatever, you know. And I got a lot of emails of people like asking if we could open up more spots. And my Parisian perfectionist immediately like went to Anthony and was like, we have to let these people in the class. Like, I don't know how to say no. And having to like temper that expectation of like, oh no, I have a really good reason for this. I can explain myself and let them know why. It's not that I am a mean person and I hate you. It's that I want you to get the experience that you pay for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's also a strength of the Parisian perfectionist, because without that kind of like part of you that is like, oh, I want to say no, but I really want you to have a good time and I want you to like it, then we kind of can tip the scale in the other direction where it's like, yeah, let everybody in. Let it be a shitty class. Who gives a fuck, you know?
Yeah, totally. It is like, I think that is a great part of the Parisian perfectionist too, is like that you really know how to create a good experience because you care a lot about the experience that people have surrounding you, and you care about the way that you teach and the way that people feel when they're in your environment.
Totally. Chapter 8 was really about rest and restoration. And I really, really loved how she talked about like rest in general. Because sometimes we think, I talk about this all the time. Sometimes we think like rest is like sitting on the couch scrolling on social media, but to your nervous system, that is another tiger oftentimes. And so she actually broke it down into passive and active relaxation. So she refers to decompression as passive relaxation that also empties yourself out. And then active relaxation is playing, so filling yourself back up. And so true restoration is a combination of passive relaxation and active relaxation, emptying yourself out and then filling yourself back up. And so if you're like, what the fuck does that mean? Here are some examples from the book for active relaxation for each type of perfectionist. The intense perfectionists, active relaxation looks like expressing aggression in healthy ways, like playing sports or exercising. Classic perfectionists, paying meticulous attention to detail, like taking an hour to style a single shelf on a bookcase. Parisian perfectionists, doing something that helps them feel connected to themselves or others, like making a care package or going on a walk with their thoughts. And for messy and or procrastinator perfectionists, this looks like engaging in pursuits that can be begun, continued, and finished in one sitting, like cooking a meal, or the glorious trifecta that is writing a thank you note, addressing the thank you note, and putting the thank you note in the mailbox all on the same day.
Love that. That is a perfect call out. You know what also the decompression or the passive and active relaxation makes me think of? The idea that you need to release to be able to manifest.
Yeah.
You know, like the decompression, the passive relaxation, you release what is what isn't yours. And in the active relaxation, you bring in joy.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think like if we were to take this into the spiritual practice, I think an example of active relaxation for the intense perfectionist could be breath work. Working with the fire element, doing something hot and fast, writing, you know, everything I hate about what's happening right now, all the things I want to release, and then burning it. The classic perfectionist, this could be organizing your altar. Organizing your supplies, getting everything beautiful, making it really easy for you to find what you need when you want to practice. The Parisian perfectionists, I feel like this could be going to some sort of group ritual, community class, connecting with other people, but also filling your own cup at the same time. And then the messy or procrastinator perfectionists, I feel like this could be like a real simple spell, like a real simple mundane magic, like I make a crystal grid, I meditate with it, and then I take it down. Or, I make a potion into my mop water and then I spread it throughout my space as I mop my space, like something that you can start and end at the same time that really doesn't have a lot of rules around it.
Yeah, doing candle magic with like a chime candle or a tea light,
Yes.
I know I have an hour or two to myself. I'm going to make this candle, dress it, light it, and let it burn to completion.
Yes. I love that. I love that. I love that. And then really chapter 9 is all about the permission to live joyfully. Like, how do you give yourself permission to live joyfully now, not after you've quote unquote earned it? And I really just love how throughout this entire book, she echoes kind of like, you're not broken if you're a perfectionist. Like, there's nothing to fix here. It's really just about, almost like making peace with yourself, like bringing this maladaptive and adaptive parts of this perfectionism to the same table and learning how to work with both sides.
Yeah, I loved that she really hit home about the fact that this is not like you don't reach adaptive perfectionism and you win and the rest of your life is perfect and you're healthy and nothing ever goes wrong.
Yes.
The way she talked about balance, like the idea of achieving balance and kind of like the release of that expectation of like you're constantly going to be flowing in and out of these states. And, the goal is not to never be maladaptive again. The goal is to be able to recognize when you're in a maladaptive state and go back to that place of self-compassion and find that joy.
Yes. And this is what we talk about in the spiritual practice all the time. When we talk about taming the tiger in your nervous system was not designed to be in the rest response 24/7, 365. It was designed to be able to flow. And so true regulation of the nervous system isn't I'm always relaxed all the time and I'm never stressed out. It's I'm able to notice when my brain thinks I'm chased by a tiger, and I can recognize and respond based on what's happening around me, not based on that wiring. And two, like I also think how she talks about adaptive perfectionism, it echoed so much of what we talk about enlightenment, right? A lot of times we think true enlightenment is I'm at peace all the time. I'm perfectly connected to my intuition. I'm always connected to spirit. Everything's going great, love and light and all of that. But what we know is that's actually bypassing the human experience. True enlightenment is being able to dip in and out of that based on the season of your life, or being able to find a sliver of that when you're going through a hard time. And I think that's how she's really describing what it means to be an adaptive perfectionist, is like, can I find that sliver of enlightenment and not hold on to it too tight that I suffocate it?
Totally. I also really love the way that she talks about pleasure, and I think that relates really well to the spiritual community as well. She really highlights that pleasure isn't like this fleeting moment of gratification. It's really the thing that like sustains your vitality and your mental health. And I think that we have so much wrapped up in like the term guilty pleasure.
Yeah, fuck that term.
Yeah, it makes me want to barf. There is no guilt in my pleasure, bitch. But I think that is something that we could really bring into our spiritual practices. This idea of like a practice in pursuit of pleasure. Yes. What are the things that bring me joy? I think that is something that, especially for those listeners who maybe do message us of like, I don't want to do this thing wrong. How do I do XYZ? We get a lot of messages of people asking for like very specific of like, here's my situation. What would you do? And like, I'm trying to do a spell for blank. What candle do I need? What herb should I put on it? Whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that like that the part of the book about pleasure would be really great for those listeners to read and apply to their practice and to their spell work.
Yeah. The basic overarching theme is what we say all the time, which is like, how can you make the practice in and of itself pleasurable rather than reaching for the outcome? Like rather than only enjoying your magic when it works, how can you make the actual practice of doing magic you make that spark joy within you?
Yeah. What is a practice that sounds fun to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That you'll be glad you did no matter what happens.
Yeah. And that's how we tap into presence too, right? Like, because if we're doing a practice that we have no enjoyment in and we're only searching for the outcome, we're not actually present for the whole situation. We're in the future.
Yes. And then that impacts the level of intention you're able to give.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because if you're in your head the whole time thinking about whether or not this is going to work, what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, what the future holds, all of those things, that presence detracts from the magic in itself, or that lack of presence.
Yes, 100%, 100%. So that's kind of like the overview of what I'm calling the building blocks from being maladaptive to being adaptive. And now we're going to move into each of the specific types of perfectionists. We're going to remind you of what the maladaptive tendencies look like, and we're going to give you specific practices to make peace with your perfectionism. We're going to give you some signs to look out for, almost like if you need a little bit of like a benchmark to know, like, am I moving in the right direction? Some things that can support you on this path, and then some specific magical practices that we recommend. And as a reminder, you don't have to write all this down. It's all in our Patreon Clubhouse. So if you want to print it out, these are literally the notes that we're looking at right now. So
yeah.
But before we dive into that, let's take a little break.
This episode is sponsored by Libro FM.
Here's a spell you didn't know you were casting every time you bought an audiobook. Are you feeding a billionaire or fueling the local bookstores?
And spoiler alert, if you're using that other audiobook app, you're probably helping a billionaire build his next spaceship while indie bookstores struggle to stay open.
Which is why we're fully obsessed with Libro FM. It's an audiobook platform that says no thanks, Mr. Tech Overlord, and instead lets you support a local bookstore of your choosing with every single book you buy.
Also, you actually own the audiobooks, like they're yours. They don't disappear if you stop your subscription. You can listen whenever, forever, as it should be.
And this month, the spell just got even sweeter. Through June 22nd, Libro FM is doing a BOGO sale where you get 2 audiobooks for the price of 1 from a curated list of absolute gems.
Plus, if you've never joined before, use code SWITCH after clicking the link in the show notes. When you sign up, you'll get 3 audiobooks for the price of 1. With the BOGO deal, that's 6. 6 magical, rage-healing, fantasy-filled audiobooks.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. And if you click our link in the episode description to shop the sale or sign up with Switch, you'll also support your favorite witchy podcast.
Clicking our link supports your favorite bookshop, your favorite podcast, and your radical little reader heart.
This isn't just a deal, it's a reclamation spell. Take your books back, burn the old system, build your own damn library. Switch to Libro FM today.
Thanks, Libro FM. And we're back.
So we're going to start with the classic perfectionist. Again, this is the one that seeks order. Reminder that a maladaptive classic perfectionist, they won't begin their spiritual practice until conditions are perfect. They might obsessively follow steps, see rituals as to-do lists. They're really rigid about time, tools, and outcomes. And they might abandon their practice if interrupted or out of sync.
Practices to make peace with your perfectionism might be creating rituals with loose scaffolding instead of strict rules. Use good enough is sacred as a mantra. Design mini rituals that can flex. For example, 1-minute altars, imperfect offerings, and leave one item intentionally out of place on your altar as a devotion to imperfection.
Oh, I love that one.
I love that. I have really fallen in love with the idea of leaving offerings for versions of yourself.
Ooh.
This is something that's come up a lot in readings that I've been doing recently, is this idea of, especially if you are doing any kind of like inner child or inner teen healing, a lot of times we try to heal from a place of shame, of I'm ashamed when I show up as my inner teen, and so I want to heal it to make it go away, which is, when you say it out loud, you see the ways that it maybe does not work like that. And so I've been talking to a lot of people who need to honor previous versions of themselves. And so maybe if you feel a lot of shame about your perfectionist type, no matter what kind of perfectionist you are, you leave an offering to your inner perfectionist.
I love that. Maybe write a letter to them.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that's so tender. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, here are some signs that you're becoming an adaptive perfectionist, classic perfectionist edition. Maybe you complete a ritual even when it's messy or interrupted. This is a great example. I had one of my students reach out to me recently. She said that she was doing her Reiki practice and her kids and her husband came home in the middle of it and her dogs were like barking and all the chaos was happening and she got pulled away from it. And normally she would completely abandon the idea of practicing. She'd be like, well, I guess I can't practice tonight. But instead she was like, okay, I'm going to take 3 more deep breaths and that's going to be my practice.
I love that.
And then she was able to approach like all of that chaos in her house with such a different mindset. And I feel like that is such like adaptive, classic perfectionist behavior.
Yes. You also might be becoming an adaptive, classic perfectionist if you find beauty in repetition instead of perfection.
Yes. Or maybe you let your intuition guide when the structure doesn't fit. Like if you're reading tarot and you're like, you know what? The guidebook doesn't resonate with me. I actually feel this, this, and this when I look at this card. That is your answer.
There you go. Yes. And then here are some things that can support you on your path towards adaptive classic perfectionism. Time blocking rituals with buffer space. Give yourself
buffer space
15 minutes before and after.
So you're not rushing into it and rushing out of it. Yeah. Journaling to invite reflection over tracking. So instead of, bullet journaling every day that you do your meditation, maybe you just have a loose journal where you write how your meditation felt.
Yeah. I feel like honestly, habit tracking can be a huge hindrance to classic perfectionists rather than a help.
Yeah.
You can also work with earth energy or do some focus on root chakra grounding to build safety in imperfection.
Yes. This is big root work. Now, if you want to guide your practice using some of the other resources that we have on this podcast, we just did an elemental series, and I think a really good element to focus on for classic perfectionists is the earth element. It is grounded, it is stable, it is structured, but it needs to also be soft to avoid that rigidity. We have a little mantra for you. So this is your mini spell. It is, I release the need to do it right. I just do it. And that is enough.
Yeah. And if you are looking for some like specific recommendation for crystals, smoky quartz for grounding and releasing control. If you love to work with herbs, we'd suggest chamomile for calming that need to be perfect and inviting some softness into your practice. And for a tool, a simple, colorless beeswax candle with no adornment to help you with that ritual through repetition, making it as easy as possible.
Yes. Okay, intense perfectionists. These are the achievement-driven ones. Reminder, the maladaptive tendencies look like treating the spiritual practice like a self-improvement project, seeking a peak experience every time and anything less is failure, pushing through exhaustion instead of listening to your energy, and maybe feeling guilty if you're not quote-unquote transforming, quote-unquote healing fast enough.
Yeah, and some practices to make peace with that perfectionism would be redefining success as just showing up, not having a breakthrough. Practicing spiritual maintenance and not just looking for transformation, including rest, integration, and non-goal oriented rituals, and tracking effort, not outcome.
Yeah, some signs you're on the right path. You feel proud of a small ritual, even if it didn't feel big. You stop mid-ritual because your body says not today. You take an early shavasana in your yoga class. You
Love
walk
that.
on your run because your body's like, I don't like that.
You know what's so funny?
Yeah.
Intense perfectionism has been showing up so hard for me in our half marathon training.
Yeah, I know. That's why I brought that up.
And truly it was taking you saying that. Wow. Okay. Continue.
And then you experience peace during a practice, not just after completing it.
And then some things that can support you on your path towards adaptive perfectionism would be fire-based rituals that offer movement and intensity in short bursts. Open-ended prompts using intuition-based decks instead of fix-me tools. Working with the solar plexus energy to balance will and surrender. And accountability buddies who celebrate showing up, not just the outcome.
I feel like that's what's balancing you and us in our running.
For sure. Having someone that I can go to and say, I'm struggling, and you being like, if you walked the 3-mile run, it would be just as beneficial for your legs and for your training. That I hear your voice in my head saying that to me almost every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Today, my plan said I had to run 3.25. After 2.6, I was like, that's enough. That's good.
We're had good. It. Yeah. I'm good.
We're good. Your mini mantra spell is, my worth is not in what I produce. My power is in showing up.
And if you're looking to do some elemental magic, it will surprise you not to hear, fire might be your girly. Super passionate and powerful, but needs tempering to avoid burnout.
Yes. And you want some specific magical tool recommendations for crystals? We recommend carnelian. This will help you balance that motivation and vitality. An herb recommendation is ginger. This helps stimulate passion, but also supports digestion. So literal and energetic. And then a tool, a fire bowl or an incense burner, so you can control that flame and hold the intensity safely.
All right. Moving on to the Madison Perfectionist, or the Parisian. This is the validation seeker. Reminder, the maladaptive tendencies would be practices are mainly to be seen as good or spiritual enough. You might often need others to approve or praise and validate your spiritual path. You might prioritize harmony over authenticity. Oof, that one hits hard. And you might avoid solo work or shadow work that might rock the boat.
Yes. So some practices that you can make peace with your Parisian perfectionism. Create solo rituals that are just for you. No audience, no aesthetic. Molly, don't turn it into a reel.
No posting allowed.
You can use mirror work or affirmations around self-approval rather than looking for validation outside yourself. You can journal with prompts like, what I want spiritually is ... and practicing no to spiritual events or tools that don't serve you.
A tip that she gave that I also think would be really helpful here is speaking about yourself in the third person, which sounds really ridiculous, or at least that was how I felt about it. I was like, I'm not going to talk about myself in the third person, but it creates a level of like energetic distance in that you're able to be more honest and more authentic. And so if that's something that you struggle with, I know for me, truly in my like most maladaptive state, I struggle to even journal honestly because I'm so afraid that not somebody will read it now. Someone will read it hundreds of years from now and think that I was an asshole.
Yeah.
And so if I were to I journal what my name wants spiritually is, might be a good way to start that.
Yeah, that's so true. I always think about that is I'm just like, what if, and I used to think about that when I sent emails at work. I'm like, what if today is the day that IT decides to hack into my emails and read everything I've ever sent? Like, what will they think of me? Or I do this. Oh God, this used to be like my worst habit, but every day I would click the view as button on my Facebook profile and I would look through my Facebook profile and go like, how will other people perceive me?
Whenever someone that I really like or respect follows me on Instagram, or like when I was in college and I like had a crush on someone and they would follow me, I would scroll through my own Instagram as if I were them. It is not normal. When I was in school, when there would be like journal entries in textbooks, I truly thought that the only reason people journaled was so that we would have historical record of things. Like, it did not even occur to me until adulthood that journaling would maybe be like something that you do for oneself.
Yeah.
That's the kind of people pleaser I am.
Yeah. So some signs that you might be leaning into that adaptive Parisian perfectionist is you no longer need to post every ritual to feel it was real. You enjoy your own company during solo practices. You say yes or no based on your intuition, not your fear of judgment.
And some things that can support you on your path to adaptive Parisian perfectionism would be heart chakra rituals or using pink and green in your color magic. Practices that affirm worth without performance, like devotional singing or intuitive movement. Journals with no prompts, just space to let your voice come through. Release the future historian that might be living in your mind. And working with rose quartz, Venus energy, or deities that affirm self-love.
Yes. Your mini mantra spell is, my magic does not need to be witnessed to be real.
Yoinks. Oof, that really... All right, our elemental tie-in, you might want to be working with some air energy, which is so funny because that's the element that I struggle with the most.
Yeah.
It's relational, thoughtful, and aesthetic, but it needs grounding in self-trust.
And some magical tools for crystals, rose quartz for that self-love without performance. Lavender is an herb to calm the nervous energy, soothe the people-pleasing urges. And for a tool, a mirror or a compact altar, something to reflect back that self-love.
I love the focus on mirror work here. All right, let's move on to the messy perfectionist, this inspiration-fueled walking tornado. Some maladaptive tendencies here would be starting 3 rituals but finishing none, overcommitting, burning out, and then ghosting your spiritual practice. You might shame yourself for inconsistency or chaos, and you hate structure but crave grounding.
Yeah. Yep. Check, 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 check. Some practices to make peace with your messy perfectionist. You can create a ritual buffet or menu that you can pick from each day. Use visual or tactile prompts to make the practice more playful. So color, texture, sound. Build altars that evolve. Let them get messy on purpose. And use the lunar cycle as a built-in rhythm rather than a rigid routine.
Signs that you're becoming an adaptive messy perfectionist would be you return to your practice without shame after a break, you enjoy rituals even when they're spontaneous or incomplete, and you stop labeling your inconsistency as failure.
Yes. Oof. And what can support you on that path to be an adaptive messy perfectionist? Multisensory tools. I feel like my messy perfectionism and my ADHD brain are very similar. And what helps my ADHD is like having lots of different things, like things I can touch, things I can smell, things I can play with, like oracle decks, essential oils, textured altar cloths, like crystals that I can hold and rub and play with. Other things are creative journaling, spell sketchbooks, or ritual scrapbooking.
Love that. Ugh.
Your grimoire does not need to look like everyone else's. You could junk journal your spells.
I love that.
Right?
So much.
Right? Working with the sacral chakra energy to nourish fluidity and finding community that celebrates nonlinear ADHD-friendly magic, like maybe your favorite podcast, Demystify Magic.
I don't know. Could be fun. Your little mantra is, every return is sacred. I do not have to finish to be magical.
That's what she said.
I know that's right.
Your elemental tie-in is water, working with the water element, keeping things creative and flowing, but needing support to hold shape. I think of the messy perfectionist a lot like the tides. Like sometimes the tides roll in, sometimes the tides roll out. We know they're going to roll back in, so we just have to wait sometimes.
Yeah, nobody is ever angry at the ocean for when high tide and low tide come through. Some magical tools for crystals: fluorite to support focus and clarity without shutting down spontaneity. Peppermint is an herb that can be great for stimulating and clarifying. It's great for scattered energy. And then for tools, a found object altar, a fluid, evolving space made with whatever inspires you in the moment.
It's so funny. This was my first altar. My first altar was a red root chakra candle, a coaster from the Cleveland Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and a lighter from my favorite musician's merch store.
And
that was the most sacred altar to me.
I love it.
Okay, and finally we have our procrastinator perfectionist. This is the hidden perfectionist. So reminder, maladaptive tendencies might show up waiting to start until you're, quote, ready, clear, grounded, or less tired, getting overwhelmed by options, so choosing none, not identifying as a perfectionist, just, quote, not consistent enough, and avoiding the spiritual practice due to fear of doing it wrong.
Some practices to make peace with that perfectionism would be micro rituals. 1 breath, 1 candle, 1 word. It's enough. Practice starting before you feel ready. Journal with permission slips, like it's okay to show up messy. Or create a ritual starter kit that lives somewhere visible. Having all of your tools super accessible in a place where you can see them is so helpful. Sometimes just like that sight is what triggers that desire to get started.
This is the greatest life hack I have ever found for my spiritual practice. You ready for this?
Hit me.
You're going to get a TV tray or like a tea tray. You know those trays?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you're going to put your spiritual tools for your practice on it. Like maybe a deck, a journal, a crystal, whatever. Just the things that you need. And you're going to keep them on that tray. So no matter where you are in your house, you can do your spiritual practice. You can do it in your office, your bedroom, your couch, wherever you are. You bring that with you. It's like a traveling altar. So you don't have to have the perfect circumstances. Like this helped me so much last summer because my office is where that's where like my spiritual practice lives. It's where all my tools are. And if you listen to the pod for the last year, you know my office in my old house did not have air conditioning and we had a very hot, humid summer. And so for a while I was like, well, I can't meditate. I can't pull my cards. I can't work with my crystals because it's too fucking hot up there. Implemented the tray and I was like, okay, I'm going to bring it down to the air conditioned room, or I'm going to bring it to the porch. I'm going to bring it outside. I'm going to bring it with me to my bed because I don't feel like getting out of bed. Mm-hmm. Game changer. Game changer.
My friend and teacher, Colby, he recently had to move, and Anthony and I were at his place, like helping him go through some stuff. And I saw he has a TV tray, like the ones that, you know, stand up on the two legs, like for a TV dinner, that have tarot cards Mod Podged onto it. And that's exactly what he uses it for. He uses it to read at like events, you know, like psychic fairs and things like that, but also uses it to like hold stuff. And I loved the idea of decorating it to make it like a sacred space. Like, this is not the TV tray that I used to eat on. This is for my like mobile spiritual practice, like around my house, wherever I might need it.
The way this is my perfectionist coming out. The way I never conceptualized that I could decorate a TV tray and instead spent 2 weeks trying to find the perfect TV tray. It has a tiger on it. You're all shocked. I know. It matches my office. But the way that I was like, oh my God. Like, again, the further I dive into this book, the more I'm like, geez, shine a mirror on me, will you?
Right? All right. Here are some signs that you are becoming an adaptive perfectionist. You practice without needing the perfect mindset or to be in the best mood. You trust your intuition even when it feels quiet or uncertain, and you show up regularly because the ritual is simple and gentle.
Yes. And some things that can support you on your path to becoming an adaptive procrastinator perfectionist are timer-based rituals. Just 2 minutes of magic, 2 minutes of meditation, 2 minutes of Reiki. I always teach my students this. I tell them, like, your job for the next however long is 2 minutes a day, period. That is your bar. That is your baseline. You cannot go above that unless you feel called. But your baseline, your goal is 2 minutes. Affirmations like starting small is still starting. Root and crown chakra support for grounding and trust, like really balancing both sides. And then visual cues or reminders like Post-its, altar prompts, magical mugs.
One you might find at demystifymagic.com.
Hey, good tie in there. I forgot we had merch.
Right? All right. Our mini spell mantra for you is, I begin before I'm ready. One breath is a ritual.
Yes. And if you want to work with the elements, we would recommend going towards spirit or ether. This is the deep, intuitive, and wise element. When you trust yourself enough to begin, it really imbues itself through everything.
And our magical tools for the procrastinator perfectionist: amethyst, a crystal to calm overwhelm and enhance that trust in your inner wisdom. Mugwort is one of my favorite herbs for intuitive connection, dream work, and using it without the pressure to act. For tools, a pocket stone or a matchbox altar. Something tiny, always ready, no prep needed.
Yes. I love just like a tiny little altar. Or turning your purse into an altar. That's something I've been playing with. Like having a tiny little deck and a crystal and, you know, drawing a sigil on your lipstick or whatever. Like really just making it so it's like, oh, this isn't the perfect altar, but like it works for now. And if I got to pull a card, I can pull a card in the friggin' Home Depot parking lot if I need to.
I love that.
Whew. All right. We just talked a lot Reminder, if you want all the notes from this episode, as well as a whole list of rituals that you can do based on your perfectionist type to become more adaptive, we have that over on our Patreon. It's on demystifymagic.com. You can see our merch there. You can see our Patreon. All of the paid tiers of the Patreon get access to the same perks. So not only do you get access to the Clubhouse, which has the worksheet from this episode, but also others, but you also get access to the group chats where I'm sure we are going to be geeking out about this book for probably the rest of eternity. And you also get some behind the scenes sneak peeks. And we also have a bonus podcast over there that at least once a month we yap and gab about everything and anything.
Yeah, and let us know what you thought about this format. Are there any other books that you think that we should talk about? Do you like these longer episodes? Slide into our DMs on Instagram at demystifymagic. We love to yap over there too.
Yes.
And we hope that you enjoyed.
Yes. And I'm going to leave you with some homework because you're a perfectionist and you want one tangible thing that you can do to integrate what you learned. And so we're going to challenge you to commit to one imperfect spiritual act this week and post about it. Tag us or let us know about it. Or you don't even have to tell us what it is, Parisian perfectionists. Just tell us you did it so that we can cheer you on. You can do that. Tag us at demystifymagic on Instagram, or you can let us know in the Patreon group chat. And of course, if you want to get a copy of The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control, we would love, love, love if you supported us and our friends at Libro FM. The link in the show notes or the description of this episode, if you click that link, it supports this podcast. And if you already have this book and you're looking for other audiobook recommendations, we actually put a playlist together of all of our favorite spiritual and nonfiction books that are on Libro FM, so you can see a whole list of them.
And if you made it this far, we love you.
We love you. Did we do it?
We did it. Yay!
Okay, my fun little perfectionists. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Demystify Magic with Molly and Madison. If you want to learn more about us, you can find all our links in the show notes.
We'd love to know what you think of today's episode, so drop us a review or give us a shout out on social media. And don't forget to let us know your magical moment of the week. Okay, love you. Bye.